Here's what's coming up on episode 75 of the Big Seance Podcast. Chuck Gotski.
And I stopped at the streetlight to, the cross. It's daylight. And I look across the street, and there's a woman, and she turns, and it's my mom. My mom, the way I remember her, all healthy, dark black hair, glasses, I call it the cat glasses, smiling at me. So this happens, and then all of a sudden the bus, goes by like typical in the movie, and then she's gone. I had notebooks, and they would go in each room, and they would take readings from every corner of the room and write them down before we even started. It took like an hour before we would start to set up, get all our data, and I mean inside and outside, checking the ground for EMF, checking everything, looking at all possible power supplies, water, stone, wood, anything they talked about in the field. I would try to incorporate it all. It's very important that first and foremost you worry about your observations and paying attention to the situations that are happening around you. Then you can bring in those tools to help understand what's going on, to capture data, to go a little further into it. Because you got 55 things, they're all lighting up going, how do you know one's not setting up the other one? And then while you're doing that, then, the ghosts or spirits or whatever you want to call them are going right by you, looking and going, look at this idiot. He's like looking at the shiny light. We could just be standing right by him farting on it. It doesn't really matter because he doesn't pay attention. And I just found it fascinating. And she goes, well, you're a psychic medium, right? The only way that this world is going to change is if we change it. So basically, we're going to go back to the 70s.
Oh, right,
yeah.
So
the 70s. And the bell bombs and everything. Yeah, that was it.
Welcome to the Big Seance Podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the seance.
Para-nerds! Things are really picking up this October, aren't they? Man, just things have been so busy. Plus, I'm trying to produce a few extra episodes for you for the Halloween season. But I did finally get the Halloween altar put together and all of the other spooky decorations that I traditionally put out around the house. This last weekend, I had the opportunity to dust off my Paranormal Investigator shoes as well. And I got to help a family with some interesting activity going on in their home. It had been a while, so it felt really good to be able to help. Plus, the family was a lot of fun, and it was great meeting them. I heard from Tammy, who just found the podcast. She sent a photo of her pumpkin scarecrow, and I posted that photo in the Big Seance parlor. I heard from Kathleen, who said she's been listening from the very beginning, which was so very cool to hear. So it's nice to finally hear from Kathleen, and here's a special shout out to you. After the last episode, I heard from several people who had some really nice things to say. Last episode of the Big Seance Podcast was the audio from my presentation from the American Hunting's Fall Festival. So thanks to those para-nerds who reached out. It was very nice. I have somewhat of an update regarding the upcoming live seance with Karen A. Dahlman. And it's a little frustrating, maybe. And so I'm just going to be honest and transparent with you. So here's the background. Our past live episodes have been produced using an online platform that no longer exists. There's actually a couple of online platforms similar that, and they've all kind of gone under and are no longer there. And so the remaining platforms that are available and capable of doing what we would need for this live seance are a little more complicated and big time than I realized. with things being so busy and me having a full-time job and, not having a team of producers in the background or a tech department to help out, it has kind of been a little overwhelming, just kind of thinking about it and planning for something that's happening in a couple of weeks. So I'm not exactly sure what will happen with that yet. For sure, we are going to have a seance somehow or another, some way. I did intend on giving you all the details, specifics today, but I'm just not sure yet. It's still kind of a question mark. So stay tuned. Continue to check back in at bigseance.com/live for the most accurate and updated information as we figure it out. Even if it doesn't end up being live, that's where I'll put it. So I don't want to say the live part of the seance won't happen, but it could be that we end up pre-recording it and sharing it with you on a later date. Still pretty cool, right? Just, not live. In fact, it could be so cool that I heard Karen and her board partner, Rodney, have costumes all ready to go. I've been challenged to find a super awesome costume as well. So stay tuned. And by the way, I'm still waiting on plenty of questions to come in for that session. And especially if we're not live, we really are going to need those questions to come in ahead of time. A little later in the show today, we'll have another installment of the Spectral Edition with Tim Prasil and a very exciting announcement about next week's episode. But first, here's the bio for today's guest. Today's guest is Chuck Gotski, also known as Chuckie G, and he's an empathic psychic medium, a spiritual advisor, and soul coach. He's co-host of Paranormal Underground Radio in the Dark with Karen Frazier, who has also been a guest here on the Big Seance Podcast. And I've also been a guest on their show. And I know we have several listeners who listen to both shows, which is kind of cool. Crossover. He's also a writer, paranormal investigator, and filmmaker. Chuck has been connected with the paranormal field for 30 years. He's had the gift to connect to spirits from childhood, but only recently has he been learning how to use those gifts for himself and others. Well, he's waiting for us in the parlor. So let's get that tea poured. So, hey, Chuckie G, welcome to the parlor. How are you today?
I am fine, Patrick. This is a wonderful parlor, by the way. It's very fancy. I like the fancy, the background you have there of all the, is that like soundproofing and everything you got there? You're looking good.
Yeah, it's, I got it and spent a lot of money on it. And really, it turns out it's just decoration because it hasn't really made much of a difference. So,
visually it's wonderful. So, we'll go with that, right? It's cool looking.
It's all, just what it looks like. That's all that matters.
It looks good. Yeah, you look good. So, I'm fine though. Thanks for asking.
Well, place yourself in the pretend parlor here. We've got some tea and some sugar cubes and some Splenda and stuff like
sugar
that if
cubes?
you need it. I don't use the sugar cubes. I always grab the Splenda.
Okay.
So,
all right.
But I love that today we get to talk, psychic medium stuff, but we also get to talk about paranormal investigation since you have very much been in both worlds. I don't very often have a guest that, can comfortably bounce back and forth on both of those things. So, in your bio, you talk about a paranormal experience that kind of kicked all of this paranormal stuff off for you. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So basically, we're going to go back to the 70s.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
The 70s. The bell bombs and everything. Yeah, that was it. So, all right. So I think it was it was in the 74, 75, somewhere around there, in the middle 70s. My mother, actually I was adopted. So, but these are the only parents I know. So, but she's my mother for all intents and purposes. She was my mom. At 36, she got lung cancer. Of course, now in the 70s, there's not really great treatments for lung cancer. So it was a hard road for her. I've always been kind of like that sensitive child, I got bullied a lot when I was a kid because I was really skinny and I always stuck to my guns on whatever I believed in. I wouldn't try to fit in cliques. So yeah, it made life a little rough. But so my mom had cancer, and it was very, hard for me to watch this go on because my brothers were younger, and so they didn't. They didn't really realize what was going on. I put the air quotes up, but didn't really realize what was going on. I did because I was older. I was 15, I think, at the time. So I would be up at nighttime, laying in my bed, and I would hear my mom down in the kitchen with my dad. She'd be crying. He's trying to cut up her food, and he's trying to feed it to her, and there's all this pain. And the doctor misdiagnosed her, and then that's when they found out after he misdiagnosed her that it really was cancer. So she used to pace around. I could hear her pacing around on the tile floor in the kitchen and crying and saying, "I can't eat." He's like, "But you gotta eat." So I listened to all this transpire.
Oh my gosh.
So then, of course, she kept going. She'd go back to the hospital and then be like, "Okay, she's good." And then the last time, she went into the hospital. Of course, she never came out. I do remember the phone ringing about, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, somewhere around there. And he got the phone call, and I knew right away, she had passed. And I always had this thing about going to funerals and wakes, thinking it's really, I don't want to say morbid, but it is kind of morbid because it's just a body. There's nobody in that body anymore. It's just a piece of meat to me, for better lack of a word, it really is. So, and I didn't really, I went to church, I was raised Methodist. I didn't really, I believe in God, don't get me wrong and all that, but I don't really believe just heaven and hell. I don't think that's a real set situation. I just don't. I'm sorry. Just, odd things would always happen around me. So anyways, so he got the call. I went down to the hospital with him. He had to go into the morgue area and identify her and sign the papers and stuff. And that was just creepy as it is. So we'll fast forward now a couple weeks later, or maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. It could even be a little longer than that. But, my dad's he's just getting out, just trying to, clear his head and talk, meet with people and just get out, because it's really rough for him. So my brothers are at home. They're sleeping the first time they're sleeping. And I'm sitting there watching TV in the living room, and the kitchen's behind me, a couple rooms over, and I hear the walking, pacing on the tile floor again. I'm thinking, what was that noise? And then I'm hearing sounds like the back door opening and closing. I'm hearing all these noises behind me, and they're very distinct. They're not oh, I think I heard something. So I turned the TV down. I had to get up and turn the TV down because you didn't have the remote controls then. And I'm like, no, I'm hearing this. So I walk into the kitchen. And I get this weird vibe, your hair stands up, kind of goosebumpy thing, but there's nothing there. And then for a minute, I'm thinking that's really weird. And then it gets weirder because then it dawns on me as I look down that, right shortly after she passed, for some reason, he had carpeted the kitchen. So there was carpet on the kitchen. So there's no way, even if someone would have snuck in the back door, which I checked, by the way, is double locked from the inside, anybody could have walked down there. So I'm like, all right, that just totally freaked me out. So, that started it. So then I'd say a couple weeks after that, I was going to one of my friends' houses. I was living in Chicago, walking home, and I stopped at the streetlight to, the cross. It's daylight. And I look across the street, and there's a woman, and she turns, and it's my mom. She's standing there, long hair, not all the hair that's gone with the bloating from the water pills and everything. No, it's my mom the way I remember her, all healthy, dark black hair, glasses. I call it the cat glasses, smiling at me. And I'm looking at her, and she's just looking at me, and I'm just, I don't even know what I'm thinking. I can't remember really exactly what I was thinking. I was just in shock. I'm just like, oh my God, is that her? Oh my God, maybe it's just somebody else. Maybe it's just somebody that looks like her. No, she's looking right at me. She's smiling at me. And then, so this happens, and then all of a sudden the bus, goes by like a typical in the movie, and then she's gone. So then I have to take this with me, being young, and at that time, the paranormal was not a big thing. It wasn't on television. It wasn't I used to have to go and scrounge at the library to get books about Bigfoots and all this kind of stuff. So, but I knew that was the turning point when I knew that. Now, if we just went to heaven and hell, how would I possibly have saw her? So then it just reinforced what I felt, that, oh my God, this stuff is real, and things always had, weird to me. Lights will flicker sometimes when I'm around in certain areas, or, I might hear something, or I see something. I know there's peripheral situations, with light and stuff, that when you hit your peripheral, you think you're seeing things, but I'm telling you, There's so many times where it's blatantly someone's standing to the left or right, and I turn and I can actually see them then move out of my sight, and then they're gone. That's been happening my whole life. So, but I never put much stock into it, So, that was my first really forte into what the hell is going on kind of a thing,
Wow. So do you think that, is there a message that she passed on kind of subconsciously in that moment?
Yeah. She passed on to me to stick with what I was believing, that there was way more to, I don't even like to call it death, because there is no death. Okay. It's transition. So stick with what you believe, because there is so much more that people just don't understand. And it's so much more beautiful than people don't understand. Like people think heaven is beautiful and hell is terrible, but there's so much more than that. So the message was basically, stick to your guns, Chuck. Someday this will come all around, I mean, I'm thinking I'm 15 years old, I'm 55 now. So, but that was the message. It was ingrained in me I need to look into this field at some point, however I can. And then, and that's how it all got started.
So for many people, the paranormal activity that they first experience is personal, but you can't get any more personal than that. I mean, that's crazy. But I mean, I was sitting here, feeling the pain from the first part of the story that you were telling me, and that's horrible stuff. And I think that must have just been her way of, that's cool that it was such a cool experience of you getting to see her after all of that experience that, growing up. I mean, I can't imagine that at all. That's
it was hard for me, because, ups and downs with your mom and dad, of course, but I loved her, so, to see someone so beautiful deteriorate to, at the end, like I went to visit her at the hospital once, and she had like her arm up in a sling, and she's so drugged up she can barely talk, and she kind of knows who you are. I wouldn't go back after that. I said, I can't. And she died in the hospital, and I never got to see her, which of course I feel really bad about, but of course I did see her. And I think that's the way that she wanted me to see her. I really think she didn't want me to see that deterioration of the flesh, the body. She wanted to show me that the spirit lives on. So I think that message was very strong, so it made the rest of it a lot easier. And that's why I don't like to go to, I'll go to a wake or a funeral because it's respect for the person. But I mean, they're really for the living. They're not for the people that have passed on. But I mean, you want to show your respect to someone, you go. But I just think it's kind of, to me, it's kind of creepy, because it's not like they're not, they might even be there just standing around, hanging around, looking to see how many people show up for their funeral and stuff. But, which that's come across a few times too. But, after that, I was like, all right, let's look into it. Of course, I'm 15. I don't got any money. How do we do this? So I think we move forward to like I'm in my 20s, I think in the 80s. And I'm like, okay. And it started, then, things were a little more, talked about paranormal wise, at least somewhat. And so I'm like, okay. So I get myself a little, digital cassette recorder. I grabbed my buddy who was a photographer, had a nice Nikon camera. I had like a pad of paper and a pencil. I had made this thing. It was like this rudimentary K2 meter, which is basically like a little flip switch with a little light, like you made in science class, to do electricity, with a little battery on a board. You could use that and you could hit that and, that would work. Probably, I think I didn't have like EMF meters or anything like that. So that's probably how I did. I just ran around up and down Archer Avenue looking for Resurrection Mary, Willowbrook Ballroom, all these different, I took all the tours. My friend who is now moved on, Richard T. Crow from Chicago. I knew him when I was a kid. He used to come over and have beers with us and stuff. And of course, he turned into the ghost guy for Chicago until he passed away. So, I did all the tours. I've done the strange and weird tours and, all that kind of stuff. Cause, it's interesting. But, that's when I really kind of got into it and started trying to make some sense out of it, at least not. And I wouldn't say it's scientific because it's not really scientific. It's more observation, which is a science in itself. Observation and taking data down and stuff is a way to see if there's any correlation to weather and EMF and take all the things that people try to put into it and see if there's any correlation to, well, when this happens at this time with this and this and this is what happens, you know? So you're just kind of looking for that. You're trying to be very repetitious about going to the same place over and over. So I got into that until, like 2010. And, you know, of course we moved forward 2010. I'm older. I got some money. So let's do Into Dark Investigations. I founded that. I got some of my friends together that were really into it. I mean, we went all out. We would come in with buttloads of equipment, but, you know, we would go in with the same mentality. I had notebooks, and they would go in each room and they would take readings from every corner of the room and write them down before we even started. It took like an hour before we would start to set up, get all our data. And I mean, inside and outside, checking the ground for EMF, checking everything, looking at possible power supplies, water, you know, stone, wood, you know, anything they talked about in the field. I would try to incorporate it all. And then, of course, we did a lot of out of the box odd stuff, you know, too, on top of it. But that's how then that started. And we did that for a good 5 years until my friend Al, who passed away a couple of years ago. And then it kind of just went down, brought it back up for a little while. And now it's just kind of like hovering right at the moment. So,
you know, my involvement in the paranormal has only been fairly recently, you know, and the conference I went to this summer, one of the most fascinating things that I loved was hearing people talk about what has changed in the paranormal field in the last 20 years, since a lot of, you know, the veterans have been involved in the community. And that, to me, you know, you were talking about the first, you know, equipment you had and that you used. And what I can tell you is that, you know, my paranormal team, we were only active for about 3 years. And even since then, we've been inactive for about 2 years, I think. Even since then, I'm overwhelmed with how the tools of the field have changed since then. And I feel, because I still want to have a hand in it, and I still like to do my own little research and be familiar with spirit communication tools and techniques. I get overwhelmed and feel like a pressure to catch up.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think about how it's changed in the last 20 years?
Well, I look at it this way. In any field that you're in, whether it's I'm an electrician, I'm a carpenter, I'm a plumber, you know, progress is important. You know, you need to progress so you can get better at doing what you do or understanding what you want to understand. Science is the same way. It makes total sense. You know, I say, if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, don't. I said, because to me, what I always taught the team, when anybody that's on our team, the most important thing, and it's corny, and I'll say, you've heard it said before, but the most important tool you can have is yourself. It's how you walk into that environment, how you understand. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're psychic or whatever. You can walk into a room. If there's a change in atmosphere, your body will pick up the change in atmosphere. It's just, that's the way we're wired. So it's very important that first and foremost, you worry about your observations and paying attention to the situations that are happening around you. Then you can bring in those tools to help understand what's going on, to capture data, to go a little further into it. But as far as, like, you know, you got to have this and this and this. Yeah. I mean, I suppose you got a lot of money. You can do that. I mean, I bought a lot of the gear when it first came out. Like, I have 3mm. I have, you know, DVR system. I have all that stuff. Which is funny because, to me, less is more. Even though I have a lot of it, we'd have it all laid out on the tables, but it would be like each guy would take 2 things. That's it. That's all you need. You can come back and then take another 2 things, because it's more of a test. It's kind of a test thing, you know, not I have to have 55 things, because you got 55 things. They're all lighting up going. How do you know one's not setting off the other one? Or, you know, you're not getting, you can't possibly be taking all these true readings off all this equipment at the same time. It's just impossible. And then while you're doing that, then, you know, the ghosts or spirits or whatever you want to call them are going right by you, looking and going, look at this idiot. He's like looking at the shiny light. We could just be standing right by him farting on him. It doesn't really matter because he doesn't pay attention. So yeah, I mean, I do like the equipment. I think it comes into play, somewhat. I mean, my view on that has changed because of how I've changed. But I still think it's important, I think, to use the equipment if you want to do, you know, effort. You want to get affirmation, or you're dealing with a client and they want to know what's going on and make sure that they don't think they're crazy. So if you go in there first, of course, you look for alternate explanations. If you can, I mean, this is the thing about people always rip on the show ghost hunters. Okay, here's the bottom line: they're true to the statement that if you can duplicate it, then you can't call it paranormal, because even though it could be paranormal, you don't know 100%. So you have to put that to the side. What you have to do is you have to weed out everything, find alternate explanations, see if you can recreate it. Then when you wind up with that tiny little bit, that 1% where it's like, I have no idea, doesn't mean that there's not an explanation. We just don't have the explanation. So that's where it fits into paranormal. Out of the norm is all paranormal means. So a lot of things are out of the norm. There's natural things that are out of the norm. We just don't understand it. So you could call that paranormal too. So yeah, when you look at it that way, and you know, the equipment is an extra tool to use, but I don't think you really have to worry about gobbling it all up. I think you find what feels good to you, and if it seems to work for you, then fine, you know.
Now, later on, I do want to talk about, you've got developing psychic abilities, and so you probably don't have to use the tools so much anymore, but I do want to hear about what your favorite tools are. Like, are there any tools right now that you just would love to have, or maybe you do have? What's fascinating you right now as far as the toys go?
As far as the toys go, I still would like to get I already have the infrared camera, so I'm just trying to think, going off the brain, thermal camera would be probably one thing that I would like to have, because I find it not just for, I'm going to catch a spirit on it, but it's interesting to catch the change in environment when events start to happen. It's like, that's what people think sometimes, and I'm not saying everybody, just as my opinion, but sometimes people forget to watch for all the changes in the environment when these events occur. They're looking at the event, but they're not looking at the environment. Like, all of a sudden, there's a cold spot and stuff like that. But is there, we found sometimes when we're doing investigations, it's a cold spot, but then there's moisture buildup for some reason. There's heat buildup, or man, it's like the electricity in this room, you could just cut it, or I feel nauseous, I'm sick. I feel, there's so many different things, so many facets you have to look at of just what's happening in the area you're in as this is happening. I find that just as fascinating, because it's actually, the environment is changing as they're maybe coming in or not coming in, or maybe they're changing the environment. It's like, there's so many questions, that you just rattle your brain with all these things. So I think a thermal camera would be something that I would really love to have. I mean, I pretty much, the other stuff I have, I like. There's lots of things I have, like the Ovilus and stuff, which is okay, but it rarely pays off. I mean, it does. There was a couple weird things like that we've used it on where it came through, but I mean, I had more luck with like just regular static recorders that you lay out somewhere, or I like the Echo Box, which I find fascinating.
I want one of those now.
Yeah, you have to. And people go, oh, it's just an app and it's just echoing and it's just, yeah, but you have to look at when you're doing that. Okay. First, my environment. Okay. We got the environment where we need to be because we took all the data. Yes, you can hear repetitive sounds and voices coming through. Yes. But when I ask a straight question and I get a straight answer, and then I ask a question again, I get another answer, the same voice, or maybe I get a different voice, but they're all intelligently talking to you. That is something that's hard to, and it's not like I'm reading into it. I'm saying specifics, and we would get them. Like, all right, for instance, we were at the Arcada Theater in St. Charles, and we were there, and we were doing, we brought in music from like the 30s, the 20s and the 30s, and we brought in like some comedy sketches that they used from the actual people that were there. So we would be playing them, and we're playing the music. And when we were doing that, the Echo Box was it started with nothing. We got nothing. Then we stopped doing that. And then the next thing you know, we're like, hey, do you like the music? And they're like, yeah, we like the music. We heard someone say, yeah, we like the music. Oh, do you want us to play more? Yes. As soon as we played more, they'd stop talking again. So whoever or whatever was there connecting with us. So, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I used to be very anti-app until, and the more I see from it, and I've never had an Echo Box. I've just,
right.
The more I see out either on the internet or, from, even though you have to take it with a grain of salt, on the paranormal shows, I'm like, oh, okay, I can kind of, you have to kind of be open to things as things change.
Right.
And, but I also want a REM pod. You have a REM pod?
I have like a millimeter. One of the millimeters actually has a REM pod on it. I have 3 millimeters. One's your standard, just reads EMF and temp. The other one reads EMF and temp, of course, and it does a vibration. And then they have one that does the REM with the antenna that actually puts out an actual field around the antenna. So then if you break that field, then, you're good to go. So, yeah. So I like to use that. It's funny because it's like we've gotten a couple actual things that have happened with it, but not as much as you think. Like, you see this stuff on television, people see this stuff on television, they think, oh, it's just going to go off all day long. And for the most part,
it just sits there.
The exact opposite. It just sits there. And you're like, really? I paid this much money for that? You know what I mean? So that's why that's why I say you need to think about what do you really want to do when you get into this field. Do you want to try to collect data? Then get a lot of the fancy equipment. If you just want to enjoy the experience, then bring a low line amount of equipment, some audio recorders and stuff like that, and use your body and observe and try to interact. It's all about what you want to get out of the field, or what you want to, do you want to make the field go further? Is it just like, some, fun little thing you want to do? I mean, you really got to know what you're getting into and why you're getting into it to probably help you to better guess at where you're going to, go with that equipment. So
is there anything about the current state of paranormal research that frustrates you?
I mean, okay. I like all the shows like anybody likes the shows, but I have to say that, and we have vests and we have our little logos and stuff like anybody else, but I think just so much is put into I want to be famous because I'm doing this versus I'm doing this. And if you happen to be noticed by somebody because of what you're doing or how you're furthering the field or how you're trying to actually make a difference, that kind of irks me a bit, because it's like, it's okay if you want to be famous. Everybody wants to be famous. They have the right to be famous. Okay. I have nothing against that. I just say, let's put it in the right context. If you're going to do that, you can be famous for lots of different reasons. If that's what you want to do, I suppose you're entitled to it, and who am I to say anything about it? But my personal opinion is that's kind of my pet peeve. It's like, and people say, well, you do like stuff on YouTube and you're doing the Chuckie G Community where you go out and talk. And I go, yeah, but my intent to this, when I got into the field, was to try to see if I could understand what's happening because of personal things that happened to me. And then, and I'm going into homes is to help this poor person so they don't have to be freaked out in their own home, which has worked. And then maybe educate them somewhat so they understand, oh, God, the paranormal is real, but it's not like we thought it was. And, cause you're melding with the environment. You're melding with energy, which is your energy too. What do you think? Why do you think that you're like, okay, for instance, you're doing an investigation and you're sitting around and you're doing all your equipment and nothing's happening. Okay. Now you stop, which is how we learned with our team. And this is what we used to do. Well, okay, stop, leave your equipment running, and then sit there and start chit chatting about dinner and what you did the other day and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, bam, things are going off. They're trying to talk to you. They're trying to interact with you. Why? Because they remember the human contact aspect. They're connecting to your spirit as your spirit is connecting them, your soul to their soul, energy to energy. So that's what brings them forward. And then they go, wow. And then, yes, you might be able to capture something, and that's fine. Yelling and screaming at them, I don't think really does much except ticks them off. If someone came into my house and was yelling and screaming at me, I would do something to get them out of my house too. So, that's how I find the best evidence we've ever gotten is from just the static recorder sitting in some room, or is just sitting around being quiet and are having a good time and laughing. And then that's when the interaction comes in more. So, yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes get so frustrated. Like, for example, when you're watching an, quote, EVP session on the paranormal shows with the questions they're asking, because I'm like, oh my God, ask them about their family. Ask them about experiences they had.
Yeah. Versus
who cares what their favorite color is, or if they're, ask them something that's going to trigger a response like you would with anyone else in the world.
Yes, I agree. It's like, I always tell my teammates, I go, don't anybody ask the question, are you dead? I'm pretty sure they figure out they can't eat and they can't poop anymore. So there's got to be something going on here. I'm wearing the same clothes 70 days in a row. Something's going on. Okay. They know to an extent that something has changed. You would know when something has changed. When your foot goes to sleep, oh my God, you can feel my foot goes to sleep. I know something changed. No one has to tell me, well, your foot fell asleep. I know my foot fell asleep. I can feel the change in myself. So I think that you can feel the change just like anything else. That's my personal opinion. So, yeah, I agree. It's like, hey, what, when you lived here, what was your family about? Or what'd you like to do? What did you do for a living? What do you think about the times now? I love asking that. Do you like what you see now? What do you think about people like us getting in your space and asking silly questions? I try to talk to them like they're people, because they're still really people. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there are other beings, and yes, I agree there are other sorts of beings and stuff, but as far as that goes, they're people. So you want to treat them like people. Sometimes I get sarcastic with them. I joke and make, like people go, oh, that's disrespect though. It's like, okay, look, if I were talking to you as a human being and I was being sarcastic and we were joking around, you would get it. You would think it's funny, whatever. The same goes for them. They're like, when I started doing that, we were doing this at a mansion. We had this $1 billion mansion we went to. And I started they're like, well, what? They'd say, I go, well, can you say 2? And they go 2. And I go, well, very good. You can repeat what I said. And then you hear a laugh. And then someone, there was a psychic there with Nancy Laporta, who's my mentor and teacher. And she's like, yes, they're liking what you're doing. I go, yes. And all of a sudden more voices were coming, different voices. And they all wanted to interact, because I wasn't treating them like something. I was treating them just like you would treat a person. And I wasn't always being, extremely like, oh, trying to be really nice about it. I'd be like, being a smart ass, and they're like thinking it was funny. So then they would come back and say things too, like, yeah, we know your name's Chuck and stuff like that. Or they say like Chuck like 7 times in a row just to drive me nuts, because they figure that's pretty funny when I'm trying to get them to repeat it. So I'm like, you don't have to say my name. And then they would say it like 7 times in a row. I'm like, seriously? And so I'm like, oh, now they're messing with me. So this is cool. This is interaction. This is what it's about. Cause to me, the best part of any investigation, the best part when I'm on an investigation, is me connecting with someone else. My energy connecting with another energy. That is more important than any of the tools. You can throw all that stuff to the side, because I love the contact, the interaction, the interwoven energy. That's what I find fascinating, because they've come and gone. How many times have they come and gone? I don't know. Hey, you've been here before, but I think that's kind of cool that they want to speak with me. I'm trying to speak with them. I think that's the most important, is the interaction. I think that's really cool.
And what might be helping you with all this interaction is the fact that you have some abilities that you're working on. And actually, one of the reasons why I knew I wanted to have you on the show as a listener of Paranormal Underground Radio in the dark, I, for many episodes, have heard your banter back and forth with Karen and talking about your developing psychic abilities. When I want to know some details about this, because obviously, you have a lot of experience in the paranormal, but when did this kind of new world of psychic mediumship kind of start kicking in, and how has that journey been?
Weird. But the actual me paying attention to it, I suppose it's always happened most of my life, because there's just so many things. And I start thinking about it now and going back and, oh my God, duh. You know what I mean? But
the communication with your mom, for example, that's probably the number one example there. Yeah.
And then it's kind of like filters away, and I'm just thinking about other things, and, just going through life and having kids and a family, So we moved to about I think it's been about 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years ago. I met Nancy Laporta, and she started helping us she's a trans medium, and she helped us do all sorts, like investigations. She'd come out and do that. I met her through Rick Hale, and I just found it fascinating. And she goes, well, you're a psychic medium, right? And she goes, you're not just a psychic, you're a psychic medium. I'm like, no, that's just silly talk, I'm just an investigator. So I would just ignore that. So eventually down the road, she just kept at me about it. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to look into it, because, I'm a curious guy. So why not, look into it and see if there's any, because it's not that I didn't believe in psychic mediums. I just didn't believe I was a psychic medium. I just figured, like when people say, man, like even Cheryl Knight, our producer from the show, said, it seems that you get a lot of good audio, like other teams get like that. Oh, I think it said Joey, where mine will be like, hey, how's it going? It's like, how's that, how do you, I go, I don't know, right place, right time, I don't know, So then I said, all right, I'm going to look into this. So I talked with, she started to help me kind of just teaching me like, how to rethink how you think, rethink how you connect, I'll explain that in a minute. But so I'm at home, I'm still married at this point because, I got divorced recently, but about a little over a year ago, I started looking into this stuff. And as I did, I found another lady by the name of June Lundgren. She's awesome. And she says, I said, well, she goes, I can help you with your psychic awakening. What it is that you're like a door or a window kind of to the other side. Most people have. Yours is like, you're just holding it closed. Like you won't like open it up all the way. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, you just need to open it up all the way and things will happen. I'm like, all right, fine. So she says, what I can do is at nighttime on Saturdays, when you are ready to go to sleep, you will call out my name and say, I want to meet you in Sanctuary, where there's a place called Sanctuary, I found. You meet me there. Call out to say my name exactly this way, my full name, and then I will connect with your soul while you're sleeping. You probably won't remember, and then I'll come to you and I'll tell you what I found out and, all the this and that. And then you'll start to notice more things happening around you. You'll notice you picking up on things. You'll notice hearing or seeing things more. I'm like, okay, fine. So we're going to do this for a little over a month every Saturday. So we did. I'll tell you, the first night I laid down there, I'm thinking, this is not going to work. And here's a logical check. This is just silly. This is not going to work. So I'm laying there, and as I'm falling asleep, I say, okay, I'm ready, and I say your name, and, to go to Sanctuary. And I hear her voice as loud as she could be go, okay, I'm here. Just like that in my head, in my ears. I didn't even know where it came from. It was so loud. There's no way. And then all of a sudden I fell asleep. So then I wake up and I'm like, I'm journaling. So I do have all these stuff journal. So I'm journaling it and I'm like, I remember floating in the air, flying in the air. I'll just say flying in the air. And I see this cool temple on the side of a mountain and I see the water. I see the trees. It's a white building. It's got wood, slatted top, wood around the windows, the door. And I remember the mountain being really tall and I remember birds and the blue sky and I could feel the breeze. And then I'm like, I want to go over there. And then I went to sleep. So then I woke up the next day. And so, she started telling me that she talked to my soul to soul, and was telling me things about my past. And I evidently a teacher in many different lifetimes, whether it's a shaman or whatever. Every time I've done this, it's always been teaching, helping others, like teaching or helping others, guiding, whatever you want to call it. So I'm like, okay, so a month goes by. We do all this, but as we're doing this, I'm like, I have to look and see if this place is real. I'm curious. So Nancy helps me get in Google, and I had drawn out a picture, as soon as I woke up, I drew this picture out. Sure enough, she goes to Google and she goes, okay, I'm going to send you a picture, and then don't freak out. And she sends me a picture, and it's a Buddhist temple, exactly how I described it, on a mountain with the trees in the lake, exactly like my drawing. I mean, it couldn't have been any closer. So at that point I was like, phew. My mind says, how do you take that in, And I'm like, but I've never seen the place. I don't look up Buddhist temples when I'm like, what the heck, So that kind of blew my mind. And I kept journaling things and seeing things. And, as I was doing it, things did start to kind of manifest. Like, I would hear things more. I could sense, like, I know there's a little boy in the room. I don't know who, but I can see, like, he's got short hair. I mean, blah, 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 blah. Then one night I'm sitting there and I'm watching TV, and I'm still married. I'm at home. It's dark. I'm downstairs watching TV, and we have the basement, and all of a sudden you hear on the door handle. I'm like, I'm just hearing things because everybody's asleep. I know they're all asleep. Like, what the? All of a sudden, it starts going so loud. It's like, I thought the thing was going to fall off. And so I look over the door and I go, knock it off. I'm watching TV. And it stopped. Even as an investigator, I'm like, did that just happen? So then, like a couple nights later, I'm sitting there and I'm watching, I'm doing something. I was reading a book. And I'm reading a book and the lights are on and all of a sudden I see someone come down the stairs. Because to my right, there's a stairs to the house. Someone in like a white t-shirt, or it was all white. Like a person. I knew it was a person because it was solid. I seen him go right past and then past this wall that we have between the kitchen and the dining room. So I got up and figured it was one of the kids because they slept, they could sleepwalk. So I got up and I looked and I got up there and there's nobody there. I'm like, well, I know 100%. I just saw a young person walk by there. So I go upstairs. I looked in every single room. Everybody's sleeping. There's nobody else awake. I went downstairs, sat down there, and I just had to take it in. I just was like, what the heck, So since then, it's been a wild ride. I mean, learning how to do meditation, connecting with the other side, connecting with spirits, because to me, I'm not a big guy in angels and such. Now I am, but at the time I wasn't. So I would just call them guardians, which, you can still call them guardians until, things started to be shown to me, and then they kind of showed themselves as, they were angels. And it was funny because like I said, I went to church and I understand the Bible, but I don't remember like the names of all the angels and stuff like that. So I'd be like, I'd be talking to someone. I'd say, my guardian first, her name was Melissa. So that had nothing to do with anything, but I found out who she was later. But Melissa wound up being Ariel because she had like red hair and very kind, and that's who that wound up being. And I'd be like, oh yeah, this guy's teaching me. His name's like Zeke. You mean like Ezekiel? I'm like, oh, is that who that is? And they're like, yeah. And I describe kind of like got glasses and he wore like this kind of 3-piece suit kind of thing. It was weird. And he'd be like, they're like, oh my God. And I go, yeah. And then eventually I got to this point where this guy was like, he wanted to, I guess, heal me or make me feel better. His name's Raph. He looked like Fabio. He like his long brown hair. And they're like, you mean Raphael? And I'm like, who? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God. So it's funny because I didn't know these things, but yet I'm interacting with these beings, so I would journal everything, wrote everything down, all the words they gave me to study grace, study love. Don't talk to people about it. Look it up yourself. Find what it means to you. So, but basically, if we back up a bit before I did the meditation, when these things were happening when I was married, I finally went to my ex-wife and I told her, this is what's happening. And the response I got was not exactly what you think you'd get. She just said that she didn't know who I was anymore, that she didn't understand that. And so I said, oh, okay. So, of course, after that, slowly afterwards, my whole life kind of imploded, lost my wife, my house. I mean, I gave away almost 3/4 of what I owned. Moving with my sons, trying to, find my life, thinking it's terrible. Contemplating not good things, not good thoughts, contemplating suicide. I'll be honest with you. But at that lowest moment, right before I started doing all this meditation I'm talking about, this lowest moment, a voice came through and it said, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Because first I'm hearing voices saying, yeah, it's okay. It's good. You've lived a long life. Do it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Very nice, voices. No negative, demony, scary stuff that people say. It's very seductive in what it does. But then I'm to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do something, and it's funny how you can think that when you still have loved ones around you, but it does happen. So then all of a sudden I hear this voice go, hey, snap out of it. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, I'm sorry, who is this? Because I heard it really loud. I'm like, is this like God or something like that? And then the voice goes, well, I'm called lots of things. I said, but I'm part of you too. I'm in here. I'm not up there. I'm looking up in like an idiot looking at the sky. And he's like, no, I'm in here. He called himself the oneness to me. He says, I'm part of everybody, but you also have a soul and this is part of you. So this is what you're hearing is a kind of a mixture of the two. So I'm like, okay. And he says, well, you need to snap out of it, quit being self-pity, quit doing all this stuff. This all happened for a reason. So then I did find out that from talking with people and understanding what happened to me, that it all did happen for a reason. It was to put me in the path I was supposed to be on, because when you don't go on the path you're supposed to go on, which there were many signs that I didn't pay attention to, the universe will take care of that for you. Sometimes not in a good way, so you should really pay attention.
So there were parts of your life that weren't resonating with that path.
There were a lot of
interesting.
And I just wasn't paying attention. And then now that I go back, I go, oh my God. It's like, duh. You know what I mean? So, it was a very interesting. I mean, that's a really hard way to learn what your path is, but sometimes it is inevitable. I mean, that's sometimes people die because that's part of their path, so they can come back then and be a spirit guide for somebody or whatever. I mean, there's reasons for everything. I don't think things happen by chance. I believe there are reasons for everything, and I'm told there are reasons for everything. So we're not always supposed to understand them, but there are reasons for everything. So, yeah,
And I'm sure now it's still painful. It's not like just this, snap and it's a new journey, right?
No. It was a year of self-reflection and talking with people and then coming to, terms with myself. But now I honestly now, I mean, if I think about it, I think about it in a different way. It doesn't hurt like it used to anymore. Now I look at it as though, oh, these were great memories because there was a reason why I was with her for 30 years. There was a reason why I had kids. There was, it was part of my path. It's just that towards the end, my path was supposed to change, but I was still just trying to hang on to it because it was comfortable. I knew it. I was set in my ways, whatever. I gained like a lot of weight. I was up to 300 some pounds. Just sit in the house. I'd go to work, come home, watch TV, go to work, come home, watch TV, do a little investigating, blah, blah, blah. I was still doing that, but it was just stagnant. So now, I went from my one son's house to my other son right here now. Now, with my meditation and, I'm connecting to community. I just hosted a metaphysically fit fest in Yorkville, Illinois. I have a website up. I have taught a few people online. I was just say taught. I've guided them to, their inner voice and stuff. I want to get out there and do these events. It's called the Soul Journey. And I will talk about my lowest lows to where I'm at now, because this will help other people to pay attention to signs before they have to get from where I was at to there. So I've been told by spirits that my personal goal or my personal reason for me being here and doing all this is to get out there and it sounds corny, spread the word, get people to understand, we're all unique on the outside, and that's important also, but we're all the same on the inside. You have to understand both sides of the fence. And that we need to kind of get this world back in shape somewhat, but don't look at the world as it's this total, terribly evil, terrible place, because, that media paints a really bleak picture. There are a lot of good things going on. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to start this thing and you're going to show people cool stuff that happens. That's what I do on my Facebook page. And you can connect with people and you can do readings for them and you can go out and you can talk and you can get in the community. I've connected with a local studio over here, the Sense of Samadhi. They're really nice people. They do yoga, holistic stuff, and they're interested in my unique views on things. So I'm kind of connecting there. So it's slowly progressing to where I need to be. And I've been told by Chris Medina, friend of mine, a few others, when they were on the show, they would say, we need to talk to you off air. I'm like, what? We need to talk to you off air. And each one that would talk to me would tell me the exact same thing, only in a different way, but the exact same story, that you need to get out in the public eye, that you're going to be on the public eye. This is what you're going to need to do. All the same kind of, the same story, I guess, that you need to get out there. You're going to be the one, the voice. You have you're a normal person. Like, what do you mean a normal person? They're like, well, you're like very relatable. I'm not, I don't act like I'm a swami or anything, because I don't pretend to know everything. But you're very relatable, easy to approach. So this is, and you like to, you can speak well. So this is why you have all these talents, is to get out there and utilize these to connect with other people, to make them understand how important it is that you listen to your inner voice and you follow and think in the correct way and not in the way we're normally taught to think. And then life gets so much better. And it is true. It gets so much better. It's not perfect. It's never perfect, but it gets much better.
So am I right? What you've been kind of talking a bit already about is the Chuckie G community. I'm not hip to the Chuckie G community. Why don't you tell us what that's about?
Well, it's funny because I was like, I just want to put a website up where I could, of course I sell my wares, I guess, in a way, because, you all have to make a living because we're here and then, we have to pay bills. And, but do readings, online classes for learning, understanding your energy, your inner voice, investigating, enhanced meditation, going past the normal meditation. I just learned Reiki, but that's not on the actual website. I'm just starting to learn that. That's fascinating because it's helping me with my energy. But the Chuckie G community is just a place where people want to go. They can go there and they can subscribe with their email and their name. And if they want something, they want to connect with me and, we can do whatever. I also, if I have events, which I'll be putting up as they come along, then I can put those out there and they can just come find me and see what I got to say, or they can say, that guy's crazy. Don't listen to him. I mean, whatever they want to do is fine. You know, I mean, this is only my opinion. This is only my personal experience. I can only tell you that if, like, as my sister-in-law put it, I've totally changed from one person to another person. And I was always the most logical, down to earth. Even when I did investigating, you couldn't sway me into half of what I even look at now. But I've learned that, you know, there's a lot more, there's a lot more going around us than you do. So yeah, the Chuckie G Community is just a way for people to connect. I got a Facebook page too. And I like to put, like, I'll find cool videos and I just share them. Well, that's a cool video, a little girl giving out bracelets, trying to get people to connect. These are the small things that are starting to do the trickle effect as you're seeing all these other things, you know, where people are getting angry and the politics and all the different things that are happening, because I'm not very political, but you got to remember that there's a flip side to everything. There's a yin and a yang. There's also balance. So you like I said, most of the time, you know, showing something positive is not just as cool as showing this crazy negative, crazy high-ended, you know, high energy stuff. So, but it's out there. So it's just part of my way of showing people that there is, and people will come back and say hey, you know, I just saw that. I was having a real terrible day. Thank you very much. Because now my day has just changed because nobody's showing that. Nobody is showing that, and they need to show that. They need to get out there, take it from mine, share it, just keep passing it along. You know, the only way that this world is going to change is if we change it. And the only way that we can change it is we need to change our mindset. We need to get out of the materialistic. I mean, hey, you know, look, I got a TV. I like my movies. I'm not saying I'm like some dude living in a little cardboard box, but you know, I used to be a collector. Okay. I used to collect everything, anything, entertainment memorabilia. I mean, I don't even know how many thousands of dollars worth of stuff. I mean, I collected over 30 years. Okay. When this all happened, 3/4 of that, half of it got thrown in the garbage. The other half is sitting behind me. My son has it. I gave it all away. I kept a small amount. Most of what I have, I gave it all away because it didn't mean the same to me anymore. What meant and what was important and what meant something to me is what's in here, not what's out here. So, for me, what's in here needs to get out, and I need to connect with people. I just need to. It's like I don't have a choice. It's like this force that's pushing me where I go, well, I don't want to do that. I want to just sit here and watch some TV. Yeah, get up, go. I'm like, all right, fine. You know, I try new things that I would never try. I tried yoga the other day. That was a painful experience, but I tried it. I'm trying things that I would never do before. I mean, I was a social person, but not like I am now, where I'm like, all right, I'll just try that. Sure, why not? What do I got to lose? You know, just try it. And then you wind up, oh, I'm connected to this person. This person's pretty cool. And then, oh, well, I didn't really like that experience of what I tried, but I connected to all these other people. Oh, and then these people kind of liked me. So it's like a snowball effect, you know, of really great energy. So, I mean, that's what the Chuckie G Community is about, is just connecting people to other people, just to show that we're all, like as my thing says, we're all one, so let it shine. You know, that's a very important thing. Let yourself shine. That means, you know, get yourself out there. You could be unique because you're Patrick and I'm Chuck. You know, you have unique things to you and abilities, and so do I. And that's good. But just don't forget, on the inside, we're all energy. We're all the same. We all have probably connected before or reconnect again, you know, but, you know, of course, while you're here, yes, you are unique. So, you know, it's kind of a twofold message that I like to get out there. So that's what that's all about.
Wow, I love it. And so what's the site? Where do people go online to find that? And I'll put that in the show notes too, obviously.
Yeah, that's fine. You can just go to the ChuckieGCommunity.com. Pretty simple.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's really easy to find, you know. Hopefully it'll start generating something soon. You know, I've gotten a few here and there, and it's nice because there's some testimonials from, like, I've helped my sister-in-law. I've helped a lady who's now actually does researching for me. She's from Indiana, but she does research for me for, like, when I go on investigations, because she's really good at that. We've become friends. But she has told me that it's, what I did with her or helped her has changed her life in lots of ways, in a good way. So, I mean, that's all it means to me. That's perfect right there, you know. I mean, I don't charge hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, you know. So, you know, I make a little bit, pay my bills, and at the same time, they get the help that they need, you know, or the guidance that they want, or, you know, because I like to try to make it unique and individual to the person. Like, I don't have like a preset thing, you know what I mean? I mean, I have a somewhat of an idea of how I'm going to approach them, but I always like to meet them first. Like, when it was funny when I met her. I'm like, okay, I'll just give you a free reading and then you can tell me. So I did this free reading. She was like, oh my God. She goes, okay. And I said, well, I know it's, it's like $100 and some for, like 2 classes or whatever, blah, blah, blah. She's like, all right, I'll let you know. So then it was cute because then she sent me a text back. Well, all right, I have some questions. I'm like, okay. She goes, so how many people have you taught? And, why do you think that you should be able to guide people or teach people? And I go, all right, well, you would be my first student ever. I said, and second of all, I think that I'm a good teacher because I've been through life experiences in a way that a lot of people maybe haven't. I've connected to spirits in a way that I am now a changed person. And I feel that I can help you to get there also. And then she came back, she goes, that's the most honest answer I've gotten. So I'm signed up. So she signed up and we did a couple classes. And since then it's been great. And I talk to her all the time. And, so, I just thought it was really cool that I'm like, cause when it came through, I'm like, all right, someone could just say, well, I have all these certificates and, I've done studies and whatever. And it's like, and there's nothing wrong with any of that either. Lots of people do that. I think it's great. Knowledge is power, man. For me, I just feel I'm more on a natural level, using my own experiences to teach, just like I'm a natural level when I'm a salesman. So when I sell at work, it's like, did you ever study for it? Or get a bachelor's degree? No, I don't. But I can outsell anybody with a bachelor's degree. I've already done that, and that's how I got my job. So, experience does count for something. So, yeah. So I just figured out, you know what? My spirit guides in my head said, just be honest. Don't you just be honest. I'm like, fine. I'll just tell her it's the first one, and she's going to go, you're a wacko, and she's going to go away. And then it's her turn over. And they said, no, if you'd be honest with you, she's going to come to you, bam, like that. And sure enough, exactly what they said, which is interesting itself, having spirit guides. So that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother talk there.
Is there any other social media outlets or anything that you want to promote or put out there? I know we gave the site, and I just want to make sure we include everything.
No, it's pretty much the Facebook page, Chuckie G Community. You can get on the Facebook page. You can go there. You find me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I think that's just as me. I have a YouTube channel. I had In the Dark Investigations. I just wiped that out recently because I want to start fresh. Mm-hmm. So the Chuckie G Community, the banner is up, but there's nothing there right now. So basically it would be the website or, through Facebook. People want to message me, they can message me. That's really the way they can connect with me.
Well, cool. This has been one of those really easy conversations that just are happening, and we could talk all night long. So this has been nice. I want to thank you for you rock. Thanks for being here in the parlor talking to us.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's not like I'm often asked to be guests on shows, so it's nice to be able to get your word out there once in a while.
Well, and we have good tea here with sugar cubes.
It's delicious with the sugar cubes, I like crunching on those babies.
They're kind of stale because no one uses them,
Oh, is that why they're so crunchy?
Yeah, we go for the Splenda.
Oh, God.
You're listening to the Big Seance Podcast with Patrick Keller. Look for us on iTunes and be sure to check out BigSeance.com for more discussion.
Welcome to Spectral Edition. I'm Tim Prasil. Among the ghost reports that I like best are the ones that provide a first-person account of the ghost, because they feel kind of like you're sitting around a campfire listening to ghost stories, but true ghost stories. This happened to me once upon a time. I've got an article that's very much like that. It has a first-person account and quite a lengthy one. The article was published in the Beaver Herald from Beaver, Oklahoma on October 4th of 1906. The headline is, Haunts the Track. Slain engineer said to revisit scene of death. Story vouched for by a man who has actually seen apparition familiar to Northern Pacific trainmen. At a recent gathering of railroad men in this city, several picturesque characters were present who had handled the throttle on western roads in the early days of railroading. One time, not long ago, by the courtesy of an engineer, said a member of the party, I was riding on an engine from Walla Walla, Washington for Yakima in that same state, over the Northern Pacific Railroad. The engineer was relating a story and had just come to the climax when he suddenly grasped the throttle and in a moment had thrown her over, that is, reversed the engine. The air brakes were applied and the train brought to a standstill within a few feet of the place where an engineer named Thorpe Twitchell, met his death 2 years previous to the time I speak of. The passengers had become curious as to what had caused the stoppage of the train, and all sorts of questions were asked the trainmen, but the engineer made an excuse that some of the machinery was loose, and in a few moments the train was speeding on to her destination. What made you stop back there?" I inquired. "I heard My question was answered by the engineer, pointing ahead and saying excitedly, "There! Look there! Don't you see?" Looking out the cab window, I saw the headlight of a locomotive. "Stop the train, man! Stop the train!" I cried excitedly. "Stop the train or—" "Oh, it's nothing," returned the engineer. "It's what I saw back of the gorge, Thorpe Twitchell's engine number 33. There is no danger of a collision, for the man who is running that engine ahead of us can run it faster backward than I can run this forward. Have I seen it before? Yes, 20 times. Every engineer on the road knows that engine, and he's always watching for its appearance when he gets to the gorge." The engine ahead of us was running silently, and kept a short distance in advance for several miles, and then for a moment we saw a figure on the pilot. Then the engine rounded a curve, and we did not see it again. We ran by a little station, and at the next, when the operator warned the engineer to keep well back from a wild engine that was ahead, the latter said nothing. He was not afraid of a collision. In order to satisfy my mind on the matter, at the next station I sent a telegram to the engine wiper at Sprague asking him if number 33 was in. I received a reply stating that number 33 had just come in, and that her coal was exhausted, and boxes burned out. After reading the telegram, I took my place in one of the passenger cars, and we once more dashed ahead, and I reached my destination on scheduled time. But you may be assured I shall never forget that night's experience on the Northern Pacific. I may add, it is commonly believed by Northern Pacific engineers that Thorpe Twitchell's spirit still hovers near Eagle Gorge. It's not just the spirit of Thorpe Twitchell that haunts that track, but his entire train, the number 33. You've been listening to Spectral Edition. I'm Tim Prasil. I have close to 300 of these articles, all published in U.S. newspapers between the years of 1865 and 1918. I post one each Wednesday on my website. It's called The Merry Ghost Hunter, and why not buy a train ticket and come visit me sometime.
Before you go, I'm excited to announce that next week's episode will be with Amy Bruni and Adam Berry. We'll be talking about lots of things, but most importantly, we'll talk about their brand new series on TLC called Kindred Spirits. I got to screen the premiere episode, actually, and I think you're going to love it. And I know you'll love my interview with Amy and Adam. That's next time. Have a great week. For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit BigSeance.com. Just click on the Big Seance Podcast logo or find it in the menu. You can also find and subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn Radio, and iHeartRadio. Do you have any comments or feedback? Go to BigSeance.com/feedback to learn how to get your voice in a future show. Or you can call my feedback line, 7755-TELL-ME. That's 775-583-5563. Interested in learning how to promote and share the podcast? Go to BigSeance.com/share. Thank you so much for listening. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.